All right, so I'm thinking I'll do a design video just to start making drawing videos and to start getting into the design process. Um, and I thought I'd just like show off a couple drawings at the start of each video. If I'm gonna be doing drawing tutorial stuff, then it's like I can show off some of my work and then do tutorial stuff, and just sketching videos would be fun because I feel like oftentimes I like it's a Ash, Pikachu, and Spearows from watching Pokemon the other day. If I have some kind of a focal point, like knowing someone is watching the work that I'm doing, I can do work that's usually a little bit better or elevated in some way. And I also want to like put together drawing tutorial type videos with more simplified language that you can use to break into it from any kind of level, and then just getting the ball rolling. So if I find something that is really cool or really interesting or useful to me, I can articulate it in my own unique way, and maybe it'll speak to someone or help someone get into the design process, to help someone find the love of drawing again. And I'm working on some Fortnite designs as I'm talking about Fortnite some. So this is my favorite Fortnite character. I'm going to do a design of my second favorite Fortnite character, and this is like trying to mix up the design in some way. And we got some kind of a base for this guy done, and I'll just like find some reference image, but then you also want to do like design stuff to also let go of what they've done. So to keep some things like signature and unique, like the pose and the stylistic elements. Some things are supposed to be there, you know, if it was redesigned. Not everything would be the same, but it's got to be signature enough to be recognizable. So we'll go with his signature pose. Maybe just like both arms down by the side, but I feel like that's just less interesting. And if I've already drawn this much, it's like, I'll find ways that I can do things better once I start. I always do, you know? And in the meantime, it's just like work with what you've got to get the ball rolling and get some momentum. And then you can fine tune on things. I keep waiting to make like the perfect design video as if such a thing exists. But what you want to make is just like something that gets your head in the game, something that puts your pencil to paper and gets you moving. And then there's all kinds of tools and techniques you can add to that, The most important thing is always just to start, and like get the marble in front of you, So once you get the marble in front of you, then you can refine it endlessly. But it's like you never want to use that as like a reason not to start, right? Because that's where you get your marble. Okay, he's got some kind of gloves, some kind of gloves and awesome leather pants, and he's gonna have some badass horns. I don't know if you could change Dominion's horns and still have him be the same character, but his horns are really fucking cool. They've got like some metal bands on them, and he looks like a super nice dude. Even though he's like this fierce demony character, I don't know. He still looks like a nice guy. He's always smiling. Yeah, he's got some cool hair, and all this stuff's really gestural, and we can go over structural and gestural drawing, which are like the two main halves of what I do. Because once you develop like the outline of something structurally and you try and get that structure in your head, then when you're adding in like details and elements, to use a loose gesturally style where you can kind of find the design by playing with it, is like mostly what I do in my design process, right? So dude's gonna have some belts, Can you help me think of some cool belts? Side belt. I want to try and switch up something. If I had all his design things complete, we'll use the side belt, I think, but maybe we won't use it yet, and we'll try to do something different. Yeah, and he's got like some bullet holes in him and some glyphs, maybe. I'm probably playing it way safe because this is the first video and all. We'll try and give him white hair. as my request of Fortnite, I want to play this same dude, but with white hair instead. And then maybe we'll do interesting design things enough where not only that he has white hair, but is also interesting in some way, you know? We'll go for that. So since it's just like starting design sketch, like none of the facial details or anything are too important, and everything's just got to be like, you know, where it's supposed to be. Yeah. Pointed ears. We're probably gonna have to move his hair up. Which is probably like the horn should be bigger. It's never good to like under exaggerate key elements. If anything, you want to over exaggerate them enough to be able to dial them back. But what am I saying? I'm not like, you know, like a pro designer or anything, so I can only speak to my process. And I think that's what got me thinking about doing tutorial videos in the first place, you know? Is like I don't have a professional background or like way of speaking or anything, but if it did resonate with someone, or there might be something that I could do uniquely well, you know, it echoes hearing cynics say the same thing way back in the day, is that working as an independent artist and kind of developing his own curriculum gives him new ways to teach. And that's always something I really expected, something I thought was super cool. Cynics is my boy. Love, infinite love for Cynics. And then, yeah, make sure his goddamn six-pack has enough goddamn room. And just like spending time like learning the shapes and defining the shapes, you know, to try and keep like a brisk pace. And sometimes you want like a lightning pace if you're doing like thumbnails, you know, and we could do a couple thumbnails as well, because at this point I can already feel myself trying to make it like good, you know, trying to make it perfect. And he's got like, you know, some fire glyphs, so we can do some fire glyphs like on this dude. Is a kind of shoulder armor thing to break the design up a little bit. So they're like circular. So there's like one, and this other one's gonna be just like pieces of a circle, right? With some glyph details in it. And this one's gonna be like complete. Bam! So it looks like cool arm tattoos or something, because he's also just looks like a really fun bro that you find at the beach or in a bar or a hotel lobby or something, and maybe you'd have like a fun conversation, but he's out there to like, I don't know, slay some demons or assassinate some mafia members or something at the same time. It'd have to be a pretty fantastic world where you wouldn't notice someone as having bright red skin as being you know, or out of the ordinary, threatening or something. But hey, that's the world of Fortnite. And yeah, no, if I'm cheating right now, I'm kind of cheating right now. I give them the same metal bandings, but just throw a bunch of intricate details on them. And then I look up a bunch of patterning later on if I'm doing a detail sketch, and make sure those intricate details read instantly as like some awesome carving type stuff, you know? I'd reference like rock stars with like intricate customized silver gear, right? And I'd reference ancient temples, and I'd reference some other designers' work, but try and keep it based and not to copy anyone always, you know? I listen to way too much Feng Zhu, you know, to be able to base my designs off of anyone's these days. So if you're trying to, you know, catch something, it's going to be like design language, right? Like the use someone has of shapes or their quality of lines or patterning. And in that way, you can reference other people's designs, but not like the exact amount of straps or something. You want to make your mind into a like design computer that can remix those things. So if you see a design that you think is hot, you can like switch it up in a whole bunch of fundamental ways and foundational ways so that it inspires your design and isn't like yours is a knockoff of it. And that's what I was thinking with the other Fortnite design thing that I did. You're gonna have to put in work so that these circles like read as like glyphs, and you can have another one over the elbow area. Nice, right? Okay, since we're just doing like easy mode. No, I mean, I shouldn't say this is easy mode, but we'll give him a bag or something. He's got some bags on his belt, and then his side belt is full of some like ammunition or something, but we could give him a holster or something instead. And I mean, I really like the bags on the belt. We'll do that as well, I suppose. Bam, you got bags on the belt. And my favorite time to do this kind of thing is when doing thumbnailing. I've tried to make a little bit bigger thumbnail, and it's not quite what I'm used to because I do these tiny drawings, you know, like this or the ones next to it, to try and get like the shape down. Or if I'm like, yo, the leg is not baggy enough or not tight enough or something, you can change up like the biggest shapes of your design to do something new with it, to do something fresh with it really, really, really quickly. You know, sometimes I'll even design in like micro size, you know, that's my pencil. And build like a 3-dimensional space. And then this would be like a second step once you've already changed up your design, or most of the time I just do original designs, so they're not based on anything. But the dimensions and proportions of his bags are going to be different. But the way that they like come to a spike instead of being flat across, so they look kind of gothic or demony or something, is going to be the same. And his belt can be like, I don't know, like I've seen leather belts like this. So again, you just like look at all kinds of stuff. This bag wouldn't be there because it's not like the center of those abs. It's the center of all of his abs. So this bag would be right on this side of his belt. Choo! Pretty good. And then like a buckle. And, you know, I've gotten design tips from like everyone, you know, from like Ahmed Aldori to Feng Zhu to so many Proco artists and interviews. Proco, super cool, super good amount of content that they have created, and very fun arts interviews and tutorials, just creating an arts community kind of a thing. I'm a damn sucker for asymmetry, so maybe we'll give him like one power glove. Or, okay, this guy's got like a chain and glove combo. But we don't want to do too much of the original in our design. I mean, we could do like patterns on like the area of legs that you have chaps or something, you know. So there's a bunch of like intricate leather carving. Something I really like. Talking about how you could just like upgrade the design really quickly so that it's doing at least something different. I like the way his jeans are like ripped up and it's like in front of his ear. His hair goes behind his ear. But we want to try and give it like some spikes as well, change it up in some way that still keeps its shape. And I'm trying to take this on just like as a design challenge. And then hopefully also do some professional design work and put together a tutorial series. But you can see me all the time, like trying to do many things at the same time. And I like all of the ideas and the progress. But it's just like starting, you know, starting so you can go somewhere, and doing things usually doesn't like, you know, prevent you from doing other things, but gives you the skill and motivation, and then you finish things so you can move on from them, instead of like, you know, like, if you do that, you can't do a different thing. If you start doing things, you'll build up the momentum to keep you doing new things, and so that when you find a project that you really, really like, you're ready to go instead of waiting for it to be perfect. you can like jump in and start applying yourself. Yeah, I think it was the game Tekken. Someone had an item that was like just like some like leather, like very bottom of the legs, and they were called chaps. I don't know if I've ever seen chaps that were just like the bottom. They're meant for like riding horses or something, like a layer of leather armor you can strap onto your pants. I suppose there's a number of uses for chaps. We're not going to talk about that. Okay, so like chains, whatever. Yeah, we could put chains on his back or something, but I just don't think that'd be as cool. You could give him a belt of chains, but then it's like the original thing is already popping off in these ways. We might just scrap it. I don't know, man. Well, you can also like sometimes just very, very, very roughly suggest something so that if you need to erase it, you totally can. And you'll see like, okay, now this space is taken up by a chain, and see how it reflects to the rest of the design, right? And do a little bit of like measuring and clean up areas, because I know that his ear is pointy, but at that point you don't. But this is all kind of just like for the designer, so that you just get an idea of my process. And I'll do more things for every level of artist, from like beginner to intermediate to something that I find that I feel could be useful to a high level artist, I don't always have it. I was talking about kneaded erasers earlier, and it's a great way you can just like lighten up an area without removing it entirely when you're using pencil, like a low opacity eraser, so that you can come in and still those like shadows of your line can become kind of like shading, I guess. Yeah. This guy's quirky. Demon smile. He's good. And then like a really badass leather glove, something cool. And here like you can look at a bunch of images of existing things and also kind of just like practice, experiment with lines and see where they take you, and like shapes, sometimes if you can just insinuate some armor or carving or something and then go in and detail it later. Since it's just kind of just like a once over, and then I'd go back in and change things. So give him some like armor on his glove. I don't know, like 3 plates of armor, some kind of Sauron-y Witch King gloves, and if the rest of it is all leather, we'll do the same carved leather pattern on it, except for some areas that we just leave blank, to keep a nice mix of areas that don't have patterns and textures on them, and some areas that have a whole lot of them, right? And then the leather would be like really cool and high quality leather, some kind of strap or something between belts. And he's got some of these and maybe bigger pouches on the back. I really like everything they're doing, the original design. And stuff like this is what I mean by like gestural drawing, is you can practice doing all of these like blocks of texture of different kinds, and to look at different sorts of patterning. What I mean by patterning is like if you look at some actually like carved leather or something, or some glyphs or temple walls or something, and then you're trying out different, like you want to create again a design engine in your mind so that you can remix those patterns and textures and then do like just like very clean long form studies, which I haven't done in a minute, you know. Uh, and I'll oftentimes rely on gestural scribbliness until I go into like cleanup mode. Stuff like that. And you learn these patterns, like both long form, or if you're doing like, you know, something like trees and bushes and clouds and such, you're gonna try and like get those textures, you know, so that, you know, if you like clouds, right, and you can read clouds crazy quickly, and then like if it's like, no, a different portion of the sky that you're covering should be clouds, you can erase it really fast and then be like, okay, I'll try again. And then you come back and you're like, that's a little bit better. You have something here and it's like the clouds a backdrop and like cutting the sky into a good collection of shapes, right? Good amount of sky, good amount of clouds, and there'd be like a scene going on, you know. So there's all kinds of ways that you can learn gestural drawing, you know. If you're doing like forms and figures and you want to draw someone, like you can learn these things pretty quickly and have a shorthand for a lot of these. So if you want to draw someone like jumping forwards like this, you know, it doesn't have to reflect the shapes, but they kind of just like create a map for the shapes, and then you're like head and you're done, right? Like a little 1 minute gesture type deal. And long form studies really help, but gestural studies really help, where you're trying to capture like the motion of a thing, you know, like the motion of a design, and you're just like kind of connecting shapes together in this, and, you know, trying to capture the movement of a pose, I suppose, is like how my art instructor explained it to me like way back in the day. So if it's like exaggerated or stylized or something, and you go in and you erase some things and you keep other things, but you try and keep at all times the design alive and moving, and so that your lines reflect that. Yeah, so you do studies, one type of studies that's like, you know, it could be structural, right? Where you're drawing like blocks and then you're like, that's the rib cage. And that's the hips. And you do a series of studies just looking at the rib cage and hips, you know, or like, we'll do one that's like, that's the rib cage, right? And then, like, that's the hips, right? So the hips are like turning, you know, so the abs are like there, like that's the center line, and then the center line goes to there. And then really quickly, you can decide like how, like, you know, all kinds of artists do this very same thing. Like the pecs are there, right? Like one side to the other. That's the front. And as you learn these anatomical things, if you're like, it's, you know, the side is here, right? So that's like the pecs are there and the ribs are there. The abs are there. To like, you can build your form around these maps, and there's lots of ways to practice it. You can practice just doing like a long form study where you try and look at exactly how something is drawn and to break them down structurally and try and get precise measurements. And then gestural stuff is together what I use, like constructional drawing and gestural drawing, both, and to try and capture a good gesture and a nice, fun, clean sense of line work. Is most of what I use in my design process. And like at first, you know, you have to practice lines, you know, you practice so many lines, and then your lines, you know, will become boxes, right? And then your boxes will get 3-point perspective, right? And, you know, anything's like moving away from the camera, and things that are farther away from the camera are smaller. So even the front of all shapes are bigger. And if the camera's higher, then the tops of all shapes are also bigger. And everything kind of just like moves away from that lens. And there's ways you can super structurally, scientifically, analytically break down perspective that were so daunting and intimidating that I didn't learn it until like the 2020s was when I started to learn perspective, and I still pick things up. But like learning a kind of just loose type of perspective that then you can like bend in space, and it's really nice not to use a perspective grid, so that if there's one building that's that direction and then it changes direction or something, you can do that without being like, well, now I need another grid to block in this shape because it's like a train, a very wide train going around a curve or something, and you want it to still be accurate. So it's like, oh yeah, it'd be smaller because moving away from the camera. Like that. And I've been drawing a lot of these like blocks of shapes that then move around. So they like bend. You take a base shape and then, you draw another shape. Right? This one would be like the same thing, but like bending down, right? But it would bump into that guy. So I'd think of like, okay, you'd have to bend it a lot from that point before it wouldn't hit the other shape. But you could take this and then bend the shape consistently from any of the points, like if it was bending down from there, yeah? And then you'd still see even more of the top of it, right? To make sure. More of the top. And you could do a whole bunch of them, like turning in space. Yeah. And you can keep it going. And the more that you do these things and find out ways that they look right, then the better. And there's some kind of just basic shape drawing things, and then you learn that everything is shapes in space with a consistent grid of perspective to like block things in. Like I like drawing shapes and then making them transparent and then drawing figures inside of them, so your figure just automatically kind of gets that perspective, like if their feet are planted on the ground, then they're going to be like that. If they're right next to each other, it follows those parallel lines within the space. And same with the shoulders and same with the waist. And then you can just do it in perspective, where it's like, okay, there's the legs and the torso from waist to shoulder and the head, and you'd see the top of the head, and then their face would go down, right? And their arms would be like side and side, right? And obviously that's a funny shape for a torso, and his head's too big and whatnot, but you can block in figures real quickly and they blend into their surroundings, and you wouldn't need anything more than this if you were just doing the first pass at comics or design or something. And you can go in and like, now his torso looks okay and his head's not too big, and your guy looks all right. So you want to learn how to be like light and loose so that you can make adjustments as you go. And we'll see what Cynics has to say about my design thought process and working with it. I like drawing for comics is super cool. A lot of manga guys were super inspirational to me, and I was always like to be able to script manga fight scenes and action and the way they use space and define momentum and use that momentum in storytelling ways and like visual storytelling and like shonen style like battles, like power levels, and like the way they do moments when a character levels up or something and just gets a lot of heart and emotion into it. It's super cool. So I've worked on ways to do that, right? Shonen man. Fighting stance. There's a enemy there, and you can, again, using really loose perspective and such, you can like set up a kind of a grid, it's like that, those lines are going to converge somewhere, and it's mostly like top down, so you can see it's going forwards in a top down space, right? And then do like an enemy there. I'm doing little things where I do like JRPG type diagrams where you do a space. You do like you try and do like a clean space, you know, um, like this, and then you just give it a little bit of a floor, or even a big block of floor. Um, and then you can draw some flora and fauna on it if you want, you know, like a tree and another tree, and then you could give them patterns and textures on them or something to make it look like this fun little area, you know, an area from a game, just like cut out of a game, a cut out of an RPG, and then you have like, you know, some kind of a crab thing, you know, and just being super loose in this space and having fun, you know, like you can do a whole little RPG thing. And like, oh, this guy, he's a level 14 crab thing, where they've already gone on like 2 adventures and it's this forest area and the crab things are tough. You want to have a tree there because then you couldn't see your party at all. And this thing's really big, I guess. So these guys are like, whoosh, you know, there's one guy. I don't know. He's got a rifle. And then we'll have another guy. It's like, and that square, again, if you just do a square at this point, if you've done a lot of practice, that's the waistline. So that's his back, that's his side. And you keep that blocky, 3-dimensional style going, even when you're gesturally drawing. I guess that's what I'm talking about. And that's one leg. So the other leg is like there, you know? And he's in like a crouch stance because this diorama isn't very big. He's got like 2 swords, 1 sword, and another one that's behind him. Yeah, 2 swords crouching down, and rifleman versus crab thing in the forest. I guess we can get like a bush here. But to try and make this bush also blocky and 3-dimensional, and to have a lighting scheme then, and to put your lighting scheme on, like this is shaded, that's shaded, give them little shadows, you know, little shadows. This guy gets a shadow, and boom, right there, right there, you're in the money. Little diorama things are fun for both like game design and comics design. Comics design is super fun. I can't hardly get enough of drawing in this way. I put it together over lots of places where doing these blocky type figures and getting really, really good at it, which you have to do so many lines, but then lines and then blocks. So you can learn to switch up your line direction really consistently to start doing blocks in any kind of way. And it's fun to take these. You can do the ones where they're standing inside the box. You can do the ones where they're standing on top of it, which is probably my favorite. But you try all kinds of different angles with them to get good at drawing from different angles, you know, get your Kim Jong-gi skills going, man. To be able to use reference effectively to learn shapes and then reconstruct those shapes in any perspective or any angle is like a god skill in the arts and design. And Kim Jong-gi's skills were just mythic, just wild. Bananas design skills. So drawing gesturally and capturing your figures with like loose, like scribbles, you know, like you want to try and keep the energy moving while you're looking back and forth from your reference, you know? So you want to, even if it's not precise, even if it's way not precise, you want to try and capture the energy of a pose, you know? Like that foot's forward, that arm's backwards, this arm's forwards or something, you know? But you want to try and scribble the pose in whatever it is, you know? If it's like an animal, you know, it's like a wolf, you know, you want to just scribble your design out and to do them in tandem with, you could also take a design of a wolf and look at the 3-dimensional shapes and try and block it down into polygons, you know? And to switch back and forth between those two things, where once you have done that, then you try and change it up. and it's like a wolf in action. And you look at a whole bunch of different pictures of wolves, you know, from all kinds of different angles, and you try and get them as quickly as possible. And this is especially good if you're composing for comics and you want to compose for the comic for a point of storytelling, right? So you want to be able to does that work from that angle super quickly, like within the first minute. And if it doesn't, you know, you should have no problem erasing your work, even if you thought it was good, but it doesn't fit within the confines of the story, to try and practice being unprecious at art, you know, where you can go in and you can erase everything that you do not need and any extraneous details after you've done them, you know. You can go in, and sometimes, you know, whenever I see artists doing this, it's pretty amazing, because you're like, if you did need to change it, that is the move, you know, that is the move, that is the skill, right? Okay. And then if you draw a wolf, am I drawing off of the page? Okay, no, it was just the top. I was pretty sure I had memorized how much space I had, and I moved it down a little bit. That's fortuitous. That's pretty good, because I would hate that so much. But then you're like, you know, this wolf, he was pretty good. His body still goes this direction, you know, and his foot's forward, but he's like turning in, you know, and it's more like a front head view, right? And then you're like wolf, right? Like, it doesn't have to be like perfect wolf, you know? But if it just gestures quickly as wolf, and then, you know, you can just have something like tiny bits of a shape and move on to the next thing if the design is in your head. You know, he's like doing a turn, and that's his tail or something. I guess he's got a really big tail. And then you can do spikes and designs or something. Drawing like holy sacred animals is something that's fun, you know, like Zelda Twilight Princess had these epic god beasts that then had like these swirling patterns on them, and they glowed of light. They're totally cool, man. Twilight Princess has good design on almost everything in the whole game. And effects. It's such a cool design effect fusion where the designs are amplified by the effects by the design, and they created this otherworldly atmosphere that has rarely been challenged in games to this day. Man, this mythic, dreamlike space where anything was possible. And, you know, they brought it into the just foundational puzzle solving Zelda mechanics, you know, to tell the story as well. So it's a series of gauntlets and dungeons and challenges that you take on, you know, and it's like story design, gameplay mechanics, you know, spaces that they create, like a sense of progression. So many things go into game design, and they do them all so well. I remember seeing the trailers for Twilight Princess way back in the day. And then, you know, the more you do this, like both long form and gestural studies, then you're like, hair has a pattern and consistency. And if you're going to draw it really, really, really quickly, then you can kind of just like move your pencil around. You can move your arm and your wrist both. So you have two different like types of direction, you know. If you're moving your arm and your wrist, then you get this really like organic patterning. I remember doing just like pages of this. You move your arm in one direction and your wrist in a different, and each time it comes out different. So that is a gestural exercise. But then you learn the texture and the pattern of various things as well, and you bring them into your design process. So you'd be like, that's like a hairband, you know? And then they've got all of this hair coming out here. And then if you're like, they have armor, and you can experiment gesturally with design, right? When you're building armor and shapes, you almost don't have to reference anything anymore. And then you can reference things, and you always want to be learning new things. So the practice goes into it to keep your art blades sharp, you know? we'll do that. We'll write. And something for just like line work, I will try and draw bubble letters of positive affirmations, so that you can draw really clean concentric lines, you know, really clean like lines right next to each other. And even though it's boring, if you have something that's like encouraging to yourself, yeah, this guy's drawing encouraging messages to himself with bubble letters, uh, as a type of art practice. Ooh. Shop. And there's all kinds of ways that you can do this, and they're specific to what kind of art you want to make and what kind of art you aspire to make and what you enjoy making, because you always want to enjoy the process too, you know. We'll give you a peace sign. And then sorry, I'm like standing up. You want to have like space to put your elbow. Feng Zhu can explain exactly how to hold your hand for the purpose of an arts designer in the exact kind of art that he creates, which is very foundational, pretty damn based, but that doesn't mean it's the only way of doing it either. I saw a sketch video where Tetsuya Nomura was sketching Sora Kingdom Hearts 2, and he holds his pencil in the single weirdest way I have ever seen a person hold his pencil. How was it? It was like upside down with like 2 fingers and the other 2 fingers, and he drew like that. It was bizarre. I was like, is there a reason for it? Is it part of his technique, or did he mess his hand up sometime? Is he drawing with some kind of a handicap or a disability or something? I have no idea. I'm sure you can find the video of Tetsuya drawing Sora, and when you look at those Final Fantasy 7, 8, 10 design books, but like 6, 7, 8, he did like environments, backgrounds, and monsters with all of like the most foundational design stuff. People that see his stuff and it's like, oh, well, he's more of an illustrator than a designer. He did so much hard design stuff back in the day for Final Fantasy, like the monsters and the training and stuff. Like, dude definitely earned his place as a designer and spent so much time in that space that then he could communicate to a whole team to express design language, beyond just what he did himself. He was good at articulating design. So he did stuff like directing Advent Children, which is the craziest thing, just a gift to the fans. I mean, maybe they made some bank off it, but it probably like hit budget. But just to like move up their graphic engines and show that they could, Advent Children is still absolutely my jam. And I love so much the work Tetsuya Nomura has done in building the stylistic language of Final Fantasy in their modern design, like to help Final Fantasy evolve to 3D spaces and whatnot, you know, just really, really great. And their cool, edgy anime, manga inspired designs and the fusion of that with the Yoshitaka Amano stuff, like starting with 7. Oh my God. He's super good. Yeah, love Tetsuya. Love the whole Final Fantasy team. Their effects and the patterns and the style language. I guess before we get off, we can just like suggest some leather or something. We won't spend long suggesting leather. I'll try and make it fit. This is like a thicker layer of leather, so the leather would still bunch up around here, but just a little bit, not as much as if it were boots, you know? And that's just general like cloth logic or something, right? Where, you know, where like fabric is being held taut and where there's like loose space that creates wrinkles, and then you can create you know, just believable textures and patterns. And especially for me, suggestive textures and patterns, where you try and like figure out how to do it generally, then how to do it quickly. And So it's not perfect. I could go in and just spend like 10 minutes on it or something, where you work forwards and then you work backwards and then you work forwards, you know? Try and get it maybe like some big blocky type shapes, some smaller shapes, and you have a good shape language. And Cynics is super fucking good about shape language, always super fucking crispy, and having shapes of different types, of having good tangents, which is like good geometry, right? So you're kind of putting blockiness into your designs and patterns and using blockiness in fun ways and thinking about like cartooning and like, yeah, that's always there in the Fortnite designs too. Keeping something simple can be more valuable than keeping something complex, and there's always a nice balance between the two. Uh, but to always try and be courageous when you make something, so that if you want to, you know, you can erase like a whole arm, right? And then go in and let's see. Okay, we were gonna do arm just down, you know, but I'm being lazy, so I'll say his arms back and then comes up here around his belt like a cowboy. Yeah. So he's resting his thumb in his belt and his hands there or something. And these are areas where you can be super gestural if you don't know the actual shape that hand would take, and just see if it works, right? Like those are his fingers, that's his thumb. His fingers go down or something, and then there's chains, and the chains fall there, or something. He looks cool. He looks like he's gonna bust his strap. You know, win some Fortnite. And design stuff like that in the micro. I often find it works great if it works in the micro, but there's so many things you can do digitally that is also just so good. Like the size of his head in proportion to his body isn't perfect, but the design's real good. So you make this like smaller, you know? Okay, that's a bit good. Not like smaller. So there's some ways that you can still do it, but being able to resize and reshape things is really good. But it's important never to let any fancy tools distract from foundational design. Another Feng Zhu thing, man. He's always like, all you need is a paper and a pen. I'm like, I enjoy the grip and texture of the pencil. He's like, yeah, I guess you're not a real designer. Not yet. It is fun drawing with pen, but you know, to be able to take things away and add them back, you know. Okay, but if we do have to like define the shape of those chains, then maybe you would add it back. Glyph tattoos are good. I like that. And like they'd glow and be fiery. He should still probably have a couple bullet holes, you know? They can be within the glyphs because that's just his thing. And they like smolder just a little bit. It's great. Great freaking Fortnite design. To look slightly shot up is good aesthetics for Fortnite. So you always want to think about what you're designing for. If it's games or something, like it should serve some kind of design function. Comics too. Like if you look at Naruto, the way that they can be drawn from any angle quickly, and recognize the characters, so that shape design plays into like why their hair and their gear and everything is the way it is, so that they can compose and script manga scenes real good. And then some things would just be the same. So yeah, glyph tattoos, different belts, a really cool armor thing. Fortnite's the way where you could really just only design an arm and get away with it. And other things, like you'd have the same armor stuff happening on his shoes. Yeah. because we already decided on like carved leather for the pants. So the shoes and this glove have this armor. And he's got white hair. Yeah. Like Yellow Clash. Uh, Not bad. The more intuitive you get with things too is just like doing studies and drawing something that you love to draw, you know, so that you can keep doing studies and to find something you can do that makes you happy, because the art, quest is most infinite. It doesn't have a stopping point ever, and if you're looking at like something way ahead, as like once I have those skills, I'll like enjoy doing art. It's going to be way hard to get those skills. Or if you have something where it's like, this is fun, I'm enjoying this and tracking progress, then it comes a lot faster, it comes a lot faster. And then just continuing to do practice and to do references of stuff and to do structural references and gestural references of things, some fire glyph. Yeah, this is the last. My phone's about out of batteries. Yeah. No, this phone is just about dead. And then stuff like alien languages or like demon glyphs or something, you just do long form practice thinking about what that would look like. And then you do scribbly practice trying to recreate those things. And then it just becomes like second nature, where you can just kind of create these things at will and suggest them at will. And if you know what you are suggesting, then your composition works. And if you're working with someone else, they have to know what you are suggesting, and then the composition works, right? Cool. Just got some a chain bracelet. I don't know. That would actually be really, I don't know how hard that would be to animate for Fortnite, but you can't have things that are too loose. Like you can have something that hangs down, but having something that's loose is like, I'm surprised how many kind of things they can render within their engine. It's pretty impressive. They've certainly got the money though, don't they? So glyphs. And then once you have a page of design stuff, to kind of just like keep scribbling on it and working and like making things, like shading or something. Just get a nice design workflow. Yeah. You can go back and detail things more once all of your foundational shapes or your design is in effect. And to make sure that it's good, you can switch the poses up and do like these quick thumbnail sketches for anything that you want to do. And then stuff like that. Like that's his arm, then his elbow is going to be bent there, and that's his forearm, right? So one arm and the other arm, but that's mostly just his forearm because that elbow is moving away from the camera. And the more you do this like moving away from the camera stuff, the better that you get at it. The better that you get. And you can build on top of a structural base. Wow. Okay. Work more on design process stuff. And like shading and anatomical details. Like you can just detail something up like way much from here. And sometime I'll have some videos where I kind of just like, hey, now the muscles are popping a little bit. Is it too much? We'll see. Hey, there you go. Hey, cool. It's I don't know. Design is fun. Design is very, very fun. Okay. We'll leave it at that. Trying to be really, really fast. Yeah. Yeah, you know, you always want to like reference how to spell words before you send them to someone. That's another pro tip for you. You always want to make sure that you know how to spell the word design, or else they won't take you seriously. Doesn't matter how good your tutorial video is. Yeah, and then stuff like fire, right? Like fire is a good thing. It's got a unique series of shapes. If you want to like create something that is fire, and like ice, you know, like crystals. And I want to do more long form practice on all of these. I used to be pretty good drawing like ice crystals and just like geometric crystals. Like there's a lot of fantasy design stuff that I just plug into really automatically. If you have a bunch of crystals in a space, it's like it's a fantasy space, obviously. See the crystals, you know? And we'll do more of that later, you know? But in finding good textures and textural elements, and doing both long form designs where you kind of grid them out and walk through them, and then gestural stuff. So your design is a combination between structural and gestural drawing, so that it's got a really nice rhythm and flow to it and looks good. And you can learn any kind of shapes and rhythm and flow. You know what I mean? Anything that you like. You know what is one person's successful design isn't to another. So you want to find things that you want to learn and hone in on those things. All right. Well, peace and love, homies. Keep it real. Keep drawing, keep designing. All right. Much love.